Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and guess what? It is episode 40. You heard right, 40 of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl and with an E. So this means that I've had 40 people come onto the show, and I've had the privilege of meeting all of these amazing people. Thank you so much for the support. So as you might have seen in the social media adverts, if you haven't, as we reach the road to 50, I want to create an opportunity for people to share their reviews about the past episodes. So what we're going to be doing every Tuesday and Friday, I'm going to be adding a little snippet of somebody reviewing the podcast, which is so exciting. So yeah, if you haven't reviewed, please do so that we can wrap off season 1 with a bang. The usual reminder, if you want to start your own podcast, you can always use Buzzsprout. There's a link provided in the show notes, and you can support the show. Now, let's get into today's episode. My guest is James Azam from Ghana, who is currently pursuing a PhD at the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa. In this episode, we learned that he wanted to be in military, but as he grew up, he realized that science offered more diverse career choice. He went on to also be on a Ghanaian national science and math show that he really wanted to get onto, and this influenced his love for science even further. Currently, James is pursuing a PhD in mathematics, specializing in epidemiological modeling to evaluate mitigation strategies for measles outbreaks. We hear about this research and how he got into this very specialized field. Also, we discuss how he was featured in Forbes Science magazine recently, and we found out what exactly that was all about. Lastly, we discuss with James his YouTube channel that he has, where he provides tutorials on some common academic tools, social media usage, productivity tools, etc. So you got to tune in to hear about all of this and so much more. Let's go. Hi, James. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anne.
Very excited to have you on today and for everybody to get to know more about you and everything that you do.
I'm excited to be here too. Thanks for considering me for your podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure. So let's get into it. Can you please give us an introduction about yourself, where you're from, where you're currently based, and what are you doing?
My name is James Azam, as you rightly said, and I'm from Ghana, and I'm doing my PhD in the University of Stellenbosch with the South African Center for Epidemiological Modeling and Analysis. So my PhD is my degree is a mathematics degree, but I'm specifically looking at modeling measles outbreaks. Obviously,
before we get into everything that you do, I know that you are into photography. So away from the science and the modeling and the mathematics, you love photography. You're an avid photographer, and you, in fact, should actually like to turn it into a side hustle. So can you please tell us more about that?
I think everyone would like to think of themselves as photographers. We always pick out our phones, point at stuff and shoot. But yeah. I like especially the theory of photography, the rule of thirds, shooting things from different angles, perspectives, looking at things in a way that you wouldn't see on a normal day. So on a normal day, you look at things from the eye level, but I like to look at things from different levels, from the macroscopic level, microscopic level. So I like to shoot small things. I have this very cute picture of a bumblebee trying to get honey from a flower. It's like one of my best shots ever. Yeah, it was a lot of work. I didn't want to get stung and stuff. So yeah, I I love the fact that it engages with my creativity. The fact that you get to move away from science where everything is super rigid. You have to write in a certain way and stuff. So things like photography engage my creativity, and it helps me in my science too, because it helps me to see the beauty in things. And for a long time now, I've been a bit reluctant to go commercial, so I've mostly been shooting people for free. By shooting, I mean photo shooting.
Not like...
yeah. So I've been herein, when I say shooting, I mean photo shooting. So I've been shooting people, models. I have friends that I take to certain places in Stellenbosch to shoot. And I populate my Instagram page. I have a page called JJ Visuals, and that's where I showcase my work. But quite recently, I've considered commercializing it. And so I'm working on that.
Great, James. That's great. So clearly you've got that creative bug. Your left and your right brain are working in sync. Let's take it back to the beginning then. How did you actually end up in this field of science? Did you always know that this is something that you want to do? And I think since we're touching on your creativity already, clearly that was probably there when you were younger as well, I'm presuming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did. Growing up, I used to be very good at drawing stuff, but the problem was I wasn't good at, I wasn't ingenious enough to create things by my own imagination, but I was good at reproducing things. So if you drew something, I could redraw it for you. And it was really awesome. It was really cool. And that was mostly like primary school and stuff. But moving on to GHS, which is like grade 8, I think, somewhere here, and on to high school. Where we come from, you can't really be an artist, or like the time I was growing up, you couldn't say you wanted to be an artist because it wasn't well paying and stuff, and you wanted to have a stable life. So right from childhood, I think the profession that really attracted me was the military. So I really, up till today, I still admire the Ghanaian military uniform. When you see the huge men and women in their uniform, is really cool, and it commands a lot of respect. And so I wanted to be a military officer, but not like a guy to go to war because I didn't want to die. So I later changed my mind and decided I wanted to be someone who works in the military but is not a military officer. So like maybe a medical doctor in the military or something, if you get it. So I just wanted to wear the uniform. That's what I wanted to do. And that also didn't materialize. I don't know. I think it just fell through the cracks, because as I went higher, I began to realize that STEM or science was more diverse to me. The endpoints for science were more dynamic than any other field. But growing up, there were some shows on TV that really influenced me. I have a national science and maths competition, which has been running for almost 20 years now, I think. And it was a very rare occasion on Saturdays in the morning at 10 a.m. when you would sit on the TV and see these young, brilliant, young men and women sitting there and answering interesting questions about why something is something. Can you calculate, can you differentiate some very interesting thing? Can you integrate something within 30 seconds or answer something within 10 seconds? And what makes it even more interesting is the crowd that shouts when they answer the questions. There's a lot of charisma involved, and it's amazing. It's surreal to sit there and watch it. So I wanted to be on that stage. I wanted to be on the National Science and Maths Quiz stage. And there was also a German show on our TVs called the Know-How Show, where they performed experiments on things. And I think the fun part about the Know-How Show was a segment called the Crazy Professor. So the Crazy Professor would do an experiment that is outrageous, and it always landed in an explosion. And it was funny, and every kid likes funny stuff. So in a way, they were indoctrinating me to enjoy science more than any other profession. So when I got to high school, I got to enter a high school that was really, really competitive. But God willing, I was able to end up being on the stage of the National Science and Maths Quiz competition. So it was a dream come true, and it came out of a lot of grace and hard work. So right from Form 1, I was chosen among some other people to form part of the team to compete in our final year, third year. And it was a lot of hard work. I worked really hard, and I eventually, it was God who put me there, honestly. But yeah, because I wasn't one of the best in the class. So yeah. But I really wanted to be there, and sitting on the stage was a dream come true. I'll never forget the experience.
That's so great. It's so great that you actually got to live your childhood fantasy. And so when you got onto that stage, was that moment, did you have that moment of like, oh my word, this is everything and more? You know, because you know when you think of something, you want something, and then when you have it, were your expectations met?
Honestly, my fear superseded any feeling of excitement. Sorry, because when I sat on the stage, saw the crowd that was looking at us, every sense of excitement vanished. But
oh man,
it's the nostalgia when you think back to it that makes you feel like, wow, that was a dream come true. Some guys, and we're really young by then, we're like 18, 17, so you don't really know what's going on. You just know, like, I need to win the quiz. So you don't like sit there and let the moment sink in until it's done, and you go home and you're like, wow, so I was really on the stage. But it's the nostalgia when you think back to it and you're like, I was on that stage. That's when you're like, wow, this is really. It also stems from my experience. I tend to thrive more on thinking back to things and enjoying the moment. So maybe it's just me, but it was a dream come true afterwards. But not during the period. That period is just a tense period of competition and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I can understand that. Sometimes when you are in that moment, it's hard to enjoy it for what it is, because in that moment you're panicked. And I think it happens to a lot of us, not in so many different situations. So now, James, this is obviously high school. So how do you land up in the field of mathematics? Because that's what you specialized in, right?
After high school, I was in love with anything to do with biology. During high school, I loved biology, but I didn't like medicine. So I ruled medicine out of my preferred programs for university. I was very good at computation, so I studied actuarial science for my undergrad, and it was way over my head. It was much harder than I imagined, but it threw all my love for math out of the window. Then after my undergrad, I got into the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, and there I did a thesis in financial mathematics stemming from my actuarial science background. But there were many options that I could pursue. There were many options, tens and tens of fields you could go to after AIMS because of the exposure they give you. So after AIMS, I threw out some applications either to get into a financial math program or an infectious disease modeling program. And I closed my eyes. So it was more like whichever one picks me, I'm going. And yes. In my own nature, I tend to enjoy the moment. So I don't just fix my dreams on one thing. I just allow nature to take its course, and wherever I find myself, I enjoy it and I fit in. So I ended up in South Africa for a mathematical sciences degree that allowed me to model measles right from the time I got here till now. So that's the short story. I hope it was short. But yeah.
So you came to South Africa for your doctorate?
I came to South Africa for a master's first.
Okay.
I applied for a master's in South Africa because I was new to the field and I didn't know anything. So jumping right into a PhD would have been problematic. And I probably didn't stand a chance anyway competing with other people who were already coming from a background of knowing what the field was about. It's a specialized field, so most people get into it only after after their undergrad. So most of us are new to it. So I decided to apply for another master's. I came here, did a master's for 2 years, and then started my PhD in 2018.
Yeah. You speak that it is a specialized field. How did you know about it? Because I didn't even know that this is something that you could do. Again, this is why I love this show and speaking to people. So how were you exposed about this opportunity before you tell us exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, just a bit of background on infectious disease modeling. It's a combination of a lot of subjects. You have to know a bit of math, a bit of statistics, a lot more computer science, programming. And I sometimes see it as a lot more programming than mathematics. I got to know about it when I got to AIMS. One of my seniors who had left AIMS told me about it. He was like, look forward to this course. It's very interesting. Don't close your mind to it. So when the course came, we were taught by a professor from Canada called Robert Smith. With a question mark at the end of his name. And he was amazing. He taught us how to model diseases. In a span of 3 weeks, we had modeled a lot of diseases, even zombie attacks and stuff. And I was like, is there anything more interesting than this? So I was like, I don't think financial math is really that interesting compared to this. So I was actually more looking forward to doing that more than I was into looking into financial mathematics. So it was just the foreknowledge. Someone told me to look forward to it. I did, and I found it interesting. I applied, and it called me. So it was more like I was probably already predestined to do it. So and over time, during my second master's in South Africa, I was still a bit indecisive. I was still considering going back to financial math because that was what my background was in. But eventually, a few people spoke to me and they were like, "You've gone through so much training doing this thing. Why don't you just stay here? Why do you still want to go back to financial math?" So eventually, I realized that was true because I had gotten a lot of quality training here in South Africa in Stellenbosch. So I just stuck with it, and it's been really fun. Yeah, it's been really fun. And every time you introduce yourself as one of those guys, they're always like, wow. Everyone's so envious. They're like, how your work is so relatable. You're solving a real life problem. And that's what keeps me going, knowing that I'm solving a real life problem.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking about your very interesting work and real life problems that you're working on, for your PhD, your research is using mathematics to evaluate mitigation strategies for responding to measles outbreaks in low-income settings. So please just tell us more about the study and this research and the importance of it and how it is very relatable.
Okay, so I will emphasize more about its importance than what I'm actually doing. So measles is a viral respiratory disease that is spread when you come in contact with the respiratory droplets of an infected person. So when they cough or sneeze and you come in contact with it, you get infected. The people who are most affected by measles are children under 5 years for many reasons, and especially babies, because there's an interplay between your maternal antibodies and a lot of things. And it used to be one of the top 5 killers of children under 5 years. And so it was targeted for elimination by 2020, which is actually this year. But measles is very complicated. It's easy. Measles is easy, but complicated. We know how to solve measles. Measles is like one of the ones we know how to eliminate. and it has a vaccine. But the problem is that the measles vaccine is a biological product, right? And to ensure it's live attenuated vaccine, that means it's a weakened form of the virus that is injected into people to kick the immune system to respond. Now, in order to keep that vaccine alive, you need to keep it in a temperature range of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, right from where it's manufactured somewhere in Europe, and it's transported all the way to that kid in a village in Malawi. So it has to stay in the cold. So during when there's an outbreak, you have to freeze ice. You have to. There's a lot. Most of the heavy parts of the measles outbreak responses are based on the ice production and the logistical implications of everything. And imagine you have to carry heavy boxes of ice with vaccines in them to cross bridges and rivers and dirt roads just to get to these kids, right? So that's where the low and middle income country aspect of my project comes in. So in a model, you really don't know who is in a foreign country and who is in a developed country and a developed country until you set out certain parameters. So some of the parameters will then be how accessible are the children and things like that. Now, any way that you can surmount this problem of freezing is a good idea. It's a good idea. And a lot of people have tried things. We are trying, not me, but like the scientific community are trying things like micro patches where they coat a micro patch needle, which is it's like a plaster that you would put on your skin, but with like many micro needles on it. So they inject it onto your skin. They just put the patch on your skin and you get vaccinated. Something like that does not require vaccines, but it requires a huge investment. Up until now, I've been speaking about the measles vaccine in its absolute sense, but it's not only the measles vaccine that's in this context. We are talking about all other vaccines. So you have rubella, you have all those ones, and most of them require ice. So the more you're able to take more of these vaccines outside of the requirement of the cold chain, the better or the more storage you have for the other ones that's hard to take out of the cold chain. So recently, a study found that actually there's a leeway in the measles products, especially the one produced in India, where you can expose the vaccine to ambient temperatures of less than 40 degrees, and the vaccine will remain stable for up to 6 days. So what that means is that you can keep it in the cold from the manufacturer into the country, but at some point on the supply chain, when you're getting to the kids, you can actually take it out of the ice. What that means is that you can go to places where there's no electricity and you don't need ice and all of that. But it hasn't been done for measles before. It has been tried on meningitis, hepatitis B vaccines and stuff. So my project is to evaluate what it means to use the measles vaccine that way. And models are usually the best tool to use because you can't really go onto the field and start trying out these things without knowing what you're looking for or what to expect. So what the models can do is to give you an idea of what to expect, whether it will be good, it will be better off, it will be way better off, it will be good but more expensive. So we do that and we give the policymakers the decision and say, hey, here it is. You can use it outside of the cold chain, but it's going to cost you 10 times more. Do you still want to go about doing that? And it's up to them to then look at the whole context, not only but public health usually trumps other things like the economics and all of that. So I might have gone round and round about the project, but yeah, basically it's me comparing these new strategies to the existing strategies where they use it in the cold chain and seeing which ones are better and in what ways you can improve them.
Oh, that's very interesting. And, you know, as we talk about vaccines, I think a lot more people are interested, especially in this climate of COVID-19. And it's quite interesting. I think it's good to understand how all these other vaccines, the ones that are are on the market and the ones that are already being worked on, how they work and how, like you said, how you control them and how you get them to these remote areas. And I'm sure it can also just give sort of insight in terms of how the possible vaccine, when it's created for COVID, will be utilized. And just to add on that, you were actually featured on in a Forbes Science article. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, that's very, very exciting. You basically made it in science terms.
Can I let you in on a secret? I actually framed the articles in my room.
Oh my God, I would do that too. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So please tell us more about this article and why you were written about in this article and the work that you were doing. So just elaborate for us.
Sometimes when God wants things to happen, he makes them happen in the way he wants it to happen. So it didn't start off as an article about me. It started out as a DM on Twitter. So the journalist contacted me saying, "Hey, I see you work on measles. What do you think? Well, how do you think its control will be impacted by COVID?" So I sent him my email. He sent me a list of questions. I answered him in the best way I could. I pointed him to very recent literature that had answered the question. So when he saw the article, he was like, "Oh, actually, this has been answered already. So let's turn it around and talk about you. What do you think? And what's your story? What's the root of your science?" If I should play on the words. So I told him what I thought would be the interplay, how similar the transmission of COVID is to measles, and how the control measures reduce physical distancing. The control measures for COVID earlier on, lockdowns and all of that, were to reduce physical distancing. And if you're physically distanced, measles is driven by contact. And the data has shown it for decades now that when children go to school, that's when measles outbreaks start. When you go on vacation, it drops. And so it's because of the contact. And also children transmit to their parents because they go pick it up from school and come give it to their parents. So if you're controlling COVID by locking down people in their homes, not going out or touching things or coming in contact with people who are sneezing, people are wearing their face mask and all of that, what's going to happen is there's not going to be a lot of measles now. Even if there's measles happening in the household, people are scared to go to the clinic because they're going to be mistaken for COVID, right? So even if it is happening, you won't see it. And that's a different conversation. That's surveillance. Like, are we seeing the cases like they're happening, or are we not seeing them because of certain other things? So that was what I explained to him. And I also brought up the issue that the WHO by then had recommended that most of these African countries shut down their routine systems, routine vaccination systems. And if you do that, you're just building up a lot of people, a pool of people who will then become susceptible to measles when things come back to normal and everyone can go out and play. That's what happened in Disneyland. Like, so many people in one place, one person with measles goes and boom, it spreads like wildfire. That's how it happens. So when you put two and two together, you realize that hopefully the the COVID control will be able to suppress measles for now. But the best way to suppress it even further is to keep the routine vaccination system running instead of closing it down. So yeah, that was what the article was about. And the rest was more about how I came to be a scientist and where I grew up and all of that. So yeah.
The roots of your science.
Yeah, the roots of my science.
Oh man, that's very interesting that there's some connection sort of with the COVID and the measles outbreak. And if anybody's interested about that article that James is featured on, you can find it on Google.
you can literally type James Azam Forbes Science and you will find it, because I know that's how I found it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was Googleable.
You are Googleable. You are Googleable. You're very Googleable. So apart from that, James, like you said, you're more than just the scientist who does modeling, mathematical modeling. You actually have this very interesting YouTube channel that literally every single time you upload your videos, it blows my mind. So the YouTube channel goes by the name of James Azam, where you provide tutorials on some common academic tools, which are my favorite. You provide some awesome hacks. People should check that out if you are in academia. My favorites were the recent one on, what do you call it, the Google Chrome, where you could the one tab. So if you're a person with a lot of tabs, that is something that you should watch. Go check his channel. And also the Mendeley one blew my mind. So and also not only that, you also do some social media usage, productivity tools, and so many other things. So how did that even come about? What was the thought process for you to start this channel?
So, and we are all like modern scientists, right? We have gone past the Einstein days where you used to write articles on the paper and it would take years to get it where it would be. These days, I usually put it this way: everyone is shouting, right? So you have to shout differently to be heard as a scientist. And I've been shouting differently for some time now. Even though I don't have publications out and stuff, I've been doing a bit of I've been in the research arena for some time now, and especially coming from Africa, where we are not used to technology from a very early stage. There's a lot of tiny things, tiny things that you could know to improve your life, and you don't know it because you've not even looked. You don't even know YouTube exists. So I started the channel because when I was an undergrad, I didn't know anything about like research or like, where do you go to find an article? How do you read an article? What are you looking for when you're looking at an article? So this lockdown sort of got me thinking, because I planned on doing this for a long time, but the fear of time management and stuff was blocking me. Yeah. So when what triggered this channel was, if you go on my channel, you'll see a 1-hour tutorial on Twitter. So it started from a conversation on Facebook where people were like, they don't use Twitter because they don't know how to use it. So I was like, oh, cool, let me organize a tutorial. So I set up a Google form, asked people what they want to know about Twitter, what they expect from the tutorial, and if you're attending, you should give me your details. And I got about 20 people to participate. So after the tutorial, people were like, this is really awesome. Can you upload it so that we can go back and watch it and things like that? So I was like, well, that could actually be the start of a channel for me. So I uploaded it onto YouTube, and some of the people couldn't make it but had RSVP'd, went to watch it, and people really liked it. And in the context of all my videos, it's doing pretty well. And I tried to explain as much as I knew about Twitter. So from there, I was like, I'm going to make feed tutorials on things that are not commonly talked about, but it's a common problem. For example, having many tabs open is always a problem. Everyone has that problem. Developers, computer scientists, researchers, we all have the problem of keeping many tabs open. So I did that tutorial, boom, it was a hit. And I was like, I'm just going to do tutorials from a very, very in-depth point of view, where I tell you what exactly every button does on the common tools we use in research. In case you use that app and have never seen that button, the tutorial is for you. If you've never used that app, that tutorial is for you too. So fundamentally, I try to explain things in depth for people to see the nitty-gritty things about every software, common software that's out there. But I'm also starting something very exciting. Sorry, I've been scared of I've been camera shy for some time now, but I think it's time for me to speak. So I want to start a vlog series on the channel where I'll be addressing a lot of people approach me asking me what the PhD is about and what do we do on a day-to-day basis and stuff. So I'll be starting a talk thing on the channel where I'll be talking about PhD experience, academic experience, emotions, mental health, navigating writing, tips and tricks, just common things we have in conversations, but you don't find it on the internet. But more importantly, from the African perspective. So from the African perspective, if you are submitting a paper, what are the things you should consider for your paper to be taken seriously? Things like that. So that's what I'm working on now. But the tutorials will keep coming in. So I'll be talking about the tutorials, linking the tutorials to my videos as I speak. Yeah.
Oh man, that's fantastic, and I'm so excited for you to do that.
I'm excited too. Yeah.
I'm a fan. Like, I'm a fan of what you do, and there's so many things that I learned that I wish I knew earlier. They would have made, like you said, they would have made my life so much easier if I knew this stuff earlier. So I think you are doing something that is very, very much needed. Like, even there's so many of us who use what we use, but we don't know how to use it effectively. So I think that's pretty awesome. And also the fact that you talk about how you want to expand your YouTube channel and have those real conversations that, again, many of us in academia, all the things that we face, mental health, publications, those are all very important. And I just want to bring it back to you and just speak on a personal note. You sadly lost your sister last year. My condolences.
Thank you.
On that, and you admitted that you did not really have time to properly mourn this loss. So I wanted to ask you, was it because you felt like, because obviously this happened while you're doing your PhD, so was it because was this feeling that you didn't have enough time, was it because you felt like you needed to get back into the academic groove? And if that's the case, what do you think what do you think the academic environment, how can it be more accommodating for these personal moments? Because I think sometimes there's not a lot of room for people to go through personal things, because there's somebody telling you you've got a paper to submit, you've got labs to run, and you have to do it in a specific time. So I just wanted to pose that question to you.
So for me in particular, when it happened, in 3 weeks, I was supposed to be giving a presentation here. So I went to Ghana for 2 weeks. My office mates were really helpful. Shout out to my Sasima mates. One of my friends organized the fundraising and they supported my flights back home, and I really appreciated it. I want to use this medium to thank Jeremy and all the others who put that together. They made a card that made me cry. Handwritten cards, and all of that. That is what you need, the empathy, right? Not saying that you understand, but showing that you understand. For example, for someone coming from all the way from Ghana, the way you can show me that you understand is to help me get home, because it's sudden news, So you can pop up a message and be like, hey, I'm sorry and stuff, but honestly, what the person wants to hear right now is like, how does he get home in the midst of all this, in the midst of the emergency? So empathy is really powerful, and that's what academia needs. And life goes on. I don't know if I had asked for them to permit me not to give the presentation. I didn't try. I didn't ask, but I just continued. I went home. I think another thing that's important in academia is the fact that we are multicultural, especially in South Africa, we are multicultural. We come from many parts of Africa, and we have different cultures. In Ghana, it takes months to mourn a person, So for the system to understand that people come from different cultures. And in South Africa, apparently it takes like a week to bury someone or something. But it's different. Yeah, it's different in Ghana. It takes weeks to plan the funeral, to go home and all of that. And most of the times, things only settle after the funeral. So understanding those contexts, and as a supervisor, asking the student what they really need and not just telling them what you think they want to hear, it will be a very important step. Because if we outline what our cultural practices are, then you understand that people sometimes need months to recover. And if you can suggest therapy and stuff like that, because also in the African context, therapy is not something we talk about. So empathy and being aware of people's cultures and incorporating that into timelines and all of that. But unfortunately, life goes on. Your PhD deadline will still approach. No one will probably hear you if you say you lost a relative and you're grieving and all of that. Yeah, we need more humanity, like humanity in academia. Sometimes time needs to stop for a second for people to breathe.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right that we are one multicultural. We have different ways to mourn and different ways to grieve or whatever is going on in our lives. I think, like you said, empathy goes a long way. And I think also it's also very important during this time as well, because not everybody processes the same way. So we're going through a worldwide pandemic. So some people are maybe get over things by working. Other people, they just need to sit and not do anything. And I think maybe, I don't know, I wish I had the answer as well. Like maybe to be like, hey, this person just needs time. Can the PhD work? But then, pause. But then obviously you've got a clock, your funding is 3 years. So you need to finish things. So there's so many things that the system is a little bit rigged in that sense that I don't think it really caters for the human element of it. It's more very robotic, forgetting that we are humans. We are humans. So I really love what you said about that whole empathy, and shout out to the people again.
Yep. Sasima, if you're listening to me.
Who showed you that support. I love that you had that. Not many people have that in their lab or in their cohort or whatever. So shout out to your people. James, as we wrap it up, the usual question that I have for my guests, what advice would you have for somebody who's listening and wants to pursue a career in STEM, but also in particular in your field?
If you've been listening to the news and listening to government briefings, if you're in South Africa and been listening to the president, you hear a lot about models. So just know that infectious disease modeling is the best field in science. And on a more serious note, we need to, as scientists, we need to take acquiring soft skills very seriously. So don't just get stuck in your science. You have to have a life outside of science. So start a YouTube channel. Speak to the camera. It's going to improve your confidence. Start a blog. Write on things.
Start a podcast.
Start a podcast. Yeah. Because if you look at the work that goes into these things, apparently there's this theory that work expands to occupy the time available for it. And so most of the time we tend to be scared of the time element. But when you start doing these things, you realize that actually there is time and I've just not been managing it well. And so for people entering into my field, you need to learn new things. You need to be open to learning new things and asking for help. But you need to learn to read a lot, because there's usually a lot of things to read. And developing diverse skills in mathematics. If mathematics is what is scaring you from entering my field, you shouldn't be scared. You should be more scared of coding, because most of the times the challenges you face will come from the coding aspects and the math aspects. And join social media, be out there, don't hide because people don't know about you. And these days, as modern scientists, people only know about you if they can Google you. So make yourself Googleable. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's some fantastic advice, James. Thank you so much for all of that. And I hope people take those notes and they get inspired also just about your story and everything that you do. So this is me just saying thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, it was so fun talking to you. This is my first podcast, so I'm so excited to be on here.
Oh no, first of many. I'm so excited in terms of everything that you're going to do, and especially in this very exciting field that is probably going to be the new thing that a lot of people need to get into. And also, apart from that, also, like you said, your soft skills, your YouTube channel, etc. I wish you all of the best with that. So
thank you very much.
Continue teaching us more hacks. We need it.
Yeah.
We need it.
I'm here to learn too. So yeah, I learn by teaching. So.
Yeah, true. And for everybody else who's listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.